You a king, I'm a god. You looking like a king and running your mouth more than looking like a king of the South. It's me, if I saw the way that you was carrying on and behaving when, the whole thing went down with you and 50 and it ended up not happening and...
Busta, you was in Leaders of the New School, which came out in that just another case of that. I was a fan of Leaders of the New School, still am, you know what I'm saying, and all your bro, but I didn't know we were reaching back, like, through generations. That's a huge generational gap there, isn't it?
Hey, yo, real talk, T.I. It don't matter what wardrobe you put on. You look like you still on a court. Looking at... You put on a church suit, you look like you're going to court. You put on t-shirt, jeans, and Timberlands, and you look like you're going to court. Yo, let me explain something to you, T.I.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And oh my god, if you thought 2024 was done serving us drama, think again, because the streets are talking, the blogs are on fire, and hip-hop Twitter has literally lost its entire mind today. We are talking about a situation so messy, so explosive, so absolutely unhinged that even I had to sit down, take a deep breath, and pour myself a whole cup of tea before I could even begin to break this down for you. Here is what we know. T.I., the self-proclaimed king of the South, went out here and tried to set up the VERZUZ battle of the decade. He called out 50 Cent 50 Cent. And you already know how that ended. 50 didn't even blink. Didn't tweet. Didn't Instagram. Nothing. Pure silence. The kind of silence that is louder than any diss track ever recorded. But then, and this is where it gets absolutely crazy, Busta Rhymes stepped into the room. And when Busta steps in, baby, the whole energy shifts. Because Busta didn't just clap back. No. Busta came with receipts, came with rage, and allegedly said some things behind closed doors that have people absolutely shook. Buckle up. This is about to get real. Alright, let's get into it. And I mean all of it. Because this story has layers, baby. This is not just a simple Twitter beef. This is not just two rappers going back and forth on Instagram Live. What we are dealing with right now is a full-blown identity crisis playing out in real time on the world's biggest stage, and every single person in hip-hop is watching with their popcorn ready. Let me take you back. Let me set the scene properly, because context is everything here. It is 2020. The world is basically shut down. Nobody can go outside, nobody can do shows, nobody can breathe without a mask on. And in the middle of all that chaos, two legends, Swizz Beatz and Timbaland, create something magical. They create VERZUZ. And what was supposed to be just a fun little Instagram Live battle between producers turns into the single biggest cultural event of the pandemic era. We are talking millions of viewers. We are talking trends every single week. We are talking about people getting dressed up in their living rooms just to watch two rappers compare catalogs on a screen. It was beautiful. It was unifying. It was exactly what hip-hop needed at that moment. And T.I. saw all of this. He watched every single battle. He saw how Erykah Badu versus Jill Scott broke the internet. He saw how Beanie Man versus Bounty Killer had the whole Caribbean going crazy. He saw how Ludacris versus Nelly had the entire South on fire. And something clicked in T.I.'s brain. Something said, I want that. I want that moment. I want that spotlight. I want millions of eyes on me while I remind the world exactly who Clifford Joseph Harris Jr. really is. So T.I. did what T.I. does. He opened his mouth. He started talking. And the name he threw out there was none other than 50 Cent. Now let's pause here for just a second. Because choosing 50 Cent as your VERZUZ opponent is not just a bold move. It is either the most confident thing a rapper has ever done or the most dangerous thing a rapper has ever done. There is no in between. 50 Cent is not just a rapper with a catalog. 50 Cent is a machine. He is the man who came out of getting shot 9 times and turned it into a platinum album. He is the man who ended careers with Instagram captions. He is the man whose beef with Rick Ross lasted for years and 50 never once broke a sweat. Challenging 50 Cent to anything is like walking into a lion's cage and saying, I heard you were hungry. But T.I. was feeling himself. And honestly, on paper, the matchup made some sense. Both came up in the early 2000s. Both had massive crossover hits. Both had beef histories that could fill a documentary. It was a conversation worth having. Except 50 Cent never responded. Not a tweet. Not a story. Not a subliminal. Not even a laugh emoji under somebody else's post. Absolutely nothing. And if you know anything about 50 Cent, you know that his silence is actually the loudest form of disrespect he has in his arsenal. Because when 50 wants to destroy you, he engages. When 50 thinks you are beneath him, he does not even acknowledge your existence. And that is exactly what he did to T.I. He looked at that challenge, decided it was not worth his energy, and moved on with his life. Sources close to the situation, and we're talking people who are actually in these circles, people who were in the room, say that T.I. was not just disappointed by 50's silence. He was genuinely embarrassed. Because he had been talking about this VERZUZ so publicly, so enthusiastically, that when 50 said nothing, everybody noticed. Fans noticed. Other rappers noticed. The blogs noticed. And the jokes started immediately. One insider who spoke to us exclusively said, and I'm quoting here, "Tip was ready. He had been going through his catalog, he had been talking to Swizz about logistics, he really thought this was happening. And then 50 just didn't care." It was a real gut punch. Now here is where the story takes its first big turn. Because most people, after being publicly ignored like that, would quietly step back. They would let the moment pass. They would find another lane. But T.I. is not most people. T.I. is the king of the South, and kings do not retreat. So instead of backing down, T.I. doubled down. He kept talking. He kept pushing for a VERZUZ match. And in doing so, he opened a door that he absolutely was not prepared for. Enter Busta Rhymes. Now let's talk about Busta for a second, because I feel like this generation does not fully understand what they are dealing with when Busta Rhymes enters a conversation. This man has been in the game since 1992. 1992. He debuted with leaders of the new school when some of your favorite rappers were still in elementary school. He has worked with every single legend in hip-hop history, from Tribe Called Quest to Mariah Carey to Eminem to Jay Dilla. His catalog is not just long. It is legendary. It is the kind of catalog that music professors discuss in university lectures. It is the kind of catalog that makes other rappers nervous just thinking about going up against it. And Busta decided he wanted T.I. on the VERZUZ stage. The initial conversation happened on Fat Joe's Instagram Live, and if you have never tuned into Fat Joe's lives, first of all, what are you doing with your life? Those things are must-see TV. Busta came on, energy was high, vibes were good, and then Fat Joe casually asked about VERZUZ. And Busta said, essentially, let's run it. T.I. Let's go. I want that smoke. Now at this point, everyone thought T.I. would jump at the opportunity. Because here is the thing, Busta had actually done T.I. a favor by offering this battle. After 50 publicly ignored him, a VERZUZ against Busta Rhymes would have been huge. Busta is respected everywhere. The matchup would have generated massive viewership. It would have reminded the world of T.I.'s catalog in the best possible way. It was genuinely a good look. But T.I. said no. And the way he said no is what started everything. T.I. got on Instagram, recorded a video, and said, and I'm paraphrasing but this is very close to his actual words, that there is a generational gap between him and Busta. That Busta is from a different era. That this would be like comparing Brandy to Dionne Warwick. He suggested that Busta should battle someone like LL Cool J, or Method Man, or Fat Joe instead. Artists from his own generation. On the surface, some people thought this was reasonable. Some fans even nodded along. Oh okay, he has a point, different eras, make sense. But Busta Rhymes did not see it that way. And neither did a lot of people paying close attention. Because here is the thing that T.I. seemed to forget. Or maybe he thought nobody would notice. But the internet never forgets, and the blogs certainly never forget. And what the blogs immediately pointed out was this. T.I. had spent months publicly chasing VERZUZ battles with rappers from multiple different eras. He had talked about Jay-Z, who is also from a different generation. He had talked about 50 Cent. He had mentioned Kanye. None of these conversations involved him bringing up a generational gap. The generational gap argument only appeared the moment Busta Rhymes stepped up. So the question on everybody's mind became, Is T.I. actually concerned about generational differences? Or is T.I. scared of Busta Rhymes' catalog? And then things got very interesting. According to multiple people connected to the situation, after T.I.'s video went public, Busta Rhymes' phone started blowing up. Industry people texting him, DMs coming in, people sending him clips of what T.I. said. And Busta reportedly watched T.I.'s video multiple times. Just watched it. Quietly. And everyone around him said that the energy in the room shifted the moment Busta finished watching. One person who was reportedly present described it like this: Busta didn't explode immediately. He got very still. Very quiet. And that's actually scarier than when he's loud. When Busta gets quiet, something is about to happen. And something did happen. Because Busta Rhymes came out swinging. He got on his platform and delivered what can only be described as one of the most thorough, most detailed, most entertaining clapbacks in recent hip-hop history. And it was not just emotional. It was strategic. Every single point Busta made was calculated. Every line was placed perfectly. This was not a man reacting out of hurt feelings. This was a veteran who had been in the game for 30 years deciding that today was the day to remind everybody exactly why they should never come for him. Let's break down what Busta actually said because every piece of it matters. First, he addressed the generational gap argument directly. And he flipped it in a way that was so clean, so surgical, that the comment section on every blog that posted it was just people typing, "He's right," over and over again. Busta essentially said, if generational gap is a valid excuse not to perform, then why are you on stages with younger artists? Why are you making music with people from different eras? Why does the generational gap only become a problem when it's VERZUZ time? That argument does not hold up under examination, and Busta examined it thoroughly. But then he went further. He said something that really shook people. He said, and this is a direct quote from the video that has been widely circulated, "Just tell the people you was really not ready to get this ass whooping on the world stage." That's the truth. And the crowd went wild. Because that line cut through every excuse, every deflection, every carefully worded Instagram video T.I. had put out. Busta was saying plainly, this is not about generations. This is about fear. This is about a man who knows his catalog cannot compete on that stage against mine and is looking for any reason not to show up. Then Busta brought up 50 Cent. And this is where it got deeply personal. Because Busta did not just mention 50 Cent's name casually. He brought it up as evidence. He pointed out that T.I. had been publicly chasing 50 Cent for a VERZUZ battle for months. Begging, almost. And 50 had shut it down completely. And now T.I. was going to sit here and talk about generational gaps and being too old? The same man who wanted to battle 50 Cent, who is not exactly a spring chicken himself in hip-hop terms, suddenly has a problem with artists from different eras? The hypocrisy was undeniable. And Busta made sure everybody saw it. Sources say that T.I.'s team was watching Busta's response in real time. Multiple people around T.I. were reportedly on their phones, forwarding the clips, reacting in the group chats. And the general feeling, according to someone with direct knowledge of those conversations, was that T.I.'s team knew he had stepped in something. One person apparently texted another, "He needs to just let this one go." But the question was whether T.I. himself would see it that way. Now here is where the story takes another unexpected turn. Because while all of this is happening publicly, something else is allegedly going on behind the scenes. And this is where our sources inside the industry come in with information that has not been widely reported. According to two separate individuals with knowledge of the situation, there were conversations happening through back channels between both camps. Not arguments. Not threats. Actual conversations. People who know both Busta and T.I. personally were reportedly reaching out, trying to gauge whether this could be turned into something positive. Whether the heat between these two could actually be channeled into a VERZUZ battle that would break the internet. One source told us exclusively, there was a real moment where it looked like this whole thing might actually happen. Like the beef was getting so much attention that people in the VERZUZ camp were reaching out, seeing if Busta and T.I. could actually sit down and make it work. There were a few days where the energy was pointing in that direction. But then T.I. did something that allegedly poured cold water on the whole thing. He went back on social media. And instead of letting Busta have the last word, which at this point would have been the smart move, T.I. revisited the situation. He made comments that were interpreted by Busta and his camp as T.I. not taking the whole thing seriously. As if T.I. thought the matter was already settled and Busta should just move on. That did not go over well. Because Busta Rhymes, as we have established, is not someone you dismiss lightly. And when he felt like T.I. was brushing off his response, that is when the clapback went to another level entirely. The footage that has been circulating online, and if you have not seen it yet, you are going to see it now, shows Busta at what appears to be a recording session or a casual hangout. And he is talking directly to the camera. But what he says is anything but casual. He starts with a line that everybody is quoting right now, "See you a king. I'm a god." And let that sink in for a moment. T.I.'s entire brand is being the king of the South. That is his identity. That is what he has built his career on. And Busta looked at that identity, looked at that title, and said, "I am operating on a completely different level than royalty. You are a king. I am a deity. We are not even in the same category." That is not a diss. That is a declaration of superiority. And the difference matters. Then Busta went in on the 50 Cent situation one more time. He described watching T.I. carry on and behave in a certain way after the 50 Cent situation fell apart. The implication being that T.I. was visibly affected by 50's rejection. That it hurt his pride in ways that people could see. And now this same man, who could not get 50 Cent to acknowledge him, was going to sit here and talk about generational gaps with Busta Rhymes? The crowd in the room erupted. And honestly, you can understand why. But Busta was not done. Because next came the catalog section of the clapback, and this is what music historians and hip-hop heads are going to be talking about for years. Busta said, again, closely paraphrasing his actual words, "I don't even got to do no competition with you with any record of mine prior to the day that you released your first single." Read that again slowly. Let it absorb. He is saying, I do not need to use any of my music that came out after T.I. started his career. I can exclusively use records from before T.I. even released his debut single, and I would still win a catalog battle. That is how deep and how strong Busta Rhymes' discography is. He was in leaders of the new school. He had solo records in the mid-90s before most current rappers were even known. He was doing collaborations with legends before T.I. had a record deal. The catalog he built in just that pre-T.I. era of his career could arguably compete with most rappers' entire lifetimes of work. It was a devastating point, delivered with confidence and zero hesitation. And then came what everyone is calling the moment of the video, the roast section. Because Busta is not just a lyrical giant, he is also genuinely funny. And when he decided to roast T.I.'s personal situation, specifically T.I.'s well-documented legal troubles, the whole thing became comedy gold while simultaneously being a perfectly placed knife. It don't matter what wardrobe you put on. You look like you still going to court. The room lost it. And the internet lost it too. Because that line is simultaneously hilarious and a direct reference to T.I.'s actual real-life experiences. T.I. has faced legal issues that are public record. Everybody knows about them. But nobody had delivered it in quite that way before. Church suit. Court. T-shirt and jeans. Court. Busta was saying that T.I. carries that energy with him wherever he goes, whatever he wears. And the visual he painted was so specific and so absurd that people could not stop replaying it. His boy Spliff was cracking up in the background, which made the whole moment feel even more genuine and spontaneous. This was not a rehearsed diss record. This was a man roasting someone in real time, from the gut, with zero filter. And that authenticity is actually what made it hit so hard. Then Busta pivoted back to seriousness for his closing argument. And this is the part that quiet hip-hop heads, the ones who have been in the game for decades, are saying is actually the most important thing he said. He talked about being timeless. He addressed T.I.'s generational gap implication, that being older means you are somehow less relevant, somehow a dinosaur, and he completely reframed it. You call it dinosaur. I call it timeless great. And then he asked a simple question. He said, if my records are playing in clubs 20 years later, if every age group is bouncing to my music, if younger fans know my catalog as well as older fans do, then what exactly is the problem? What gap are we talking about? The gap does not exist when the music transcends generations. This point was not just about the VERZUZ argument. This was Busta making a broader statement about artistry versus trends, about legacy versus relevance, about what it truly means to be great in hip-hop versus what it means to be successful in a particular moment. And whether you are Team T.I. or Team Busta in this situation, it is very hard to argue with that logic. Now, in the days following Busta's clapback, the reactions from the hip-hop community have been pouring in, and they have been fascinating to watch. Several artists who declined to be named publicly, because, as we all know, nobody wants to get on the wrong side of either of these men, have reportedly been speaking in support of Busta's position privately. The general sentiment, according to sources in the industry, is that T.I. overplayed his hand, that the generational gap excuse was transparent, that a man who spent months publicly hunting for VERZUZ battles should not get to suddenly decide which eras are compatible when a legitimate challenger shows up. One artist, speaking on condition of anonymity, reportedly said, "Everybody respects what Tip has done. His catalog is real. But Busta, come on. You can't use generational gap as your exit when you were just out here calling out half the game. That doesn't add up, and everybody knows it." Fans have been equally vocal. The comment sections on every major hip-hop channel are filled with debate. On one side, you have people who genuinely feel T.I. made a valid stylistic point, that different eras produce different sounds, and pitting them against each other in a VERZUZ format might not make compelling television. On the other side, which appears to be the significantly larger side based on engagement numbers, you have people who feel that T.I. was simply afraid and used the generational gap argument as a convenient escape route. The engagement numbers on Busta's clapback video, by the way, are significant. Views climbed rapidly. Comments were overwhelmingly in Busta's favor. Even people who are generally T.I. supporters were finding it difficult to defend the generational gap reasoning in light of T.I.'s previous challenges to artists across multiple eras. And social media did what social media does. It created receipts. Thread after thread appeared with documented examples of T.I. calling out or engaging with rappers from eras before and after his own. The evidence made the generational gap argument look increasingly weak with every screenshot that circulated. Behind the scenes, the VERZUZ situation is reportedly still not completely dead. Sources tell us that conversations are ongoing about whether a modified version of this matchup, perhaps not a traditional VERZUZ but some kind of live event or panel discussion, could still happen. Swizz Beatz, who keeps his ear to the ground on all things VERZUZ related, reportedly finds the whole situation entertaining and has not ruled anything out. But for that to happen, something would need to change in the dynamic between Busta and T.I. And right now, after everything that has been said publicly, the energy between the two camps is not exactly warm. There is also a larger conversation happening in the background that goes beyond just this specific situation. People in the industry are asking, what does this whole saga say about the culture of challenges and call-outs in hip-hop? Because there has been a pattern emerging where artists publicly demand recognition, publicly call out bigger names, and then when those bigger names either do not respond or when smaller names step up to challenge them, the goalposts suddenly move. T.I. is not the only artist who has been caught in this pattern, but right now he is the most visible example of it. And Busta Rhymes, perhaps intentionally, perhaps just because of his natural instinct to speak his mind, ended up becoming the person who put that whole dynamic under a spotlight. What is also worth noting is the way Busta handled the personal elements of this beef versus the professional elements. Because there were moments in his clapback where he could have gone much harder on T.I. personally. There is plenty of material out there. But Busta mostly stayed in the lanes of music, legacy, and the specific VERZUZ situation. The court joke was sharp, but it was based on public record. The "you look like you're going to court" line was funny, but it did not cross into genuinely harmful territory. That restraint, actually, is part of what made the clapback so effective. Because Busta showed he could destroy you without needing to resort to genuinely low blows. He kept it in the entertainment zone. Sharp, funny, devastating, but not the kind of thing that ends relationships permanently or poisons wells beyond repair. And Busta himself, in the midst of all of this, made a point of saying it's all love. That he has respect for what T.I. has built. That his issue was specifically with the way T.I. dismissed the challenge. Not with T.I. as a person, not with T.I. as an artist, but with the specific behavior in this specific situation. That nuance matters. Because it gives this whole thing a potential off-ramp. It means the door is not completely closed. It means that in 6 months or a year, these two could be seen laughing together at an industry event and nobody would be shocked. The beef feels real, but it does not feel permanent. And in hip-hop, that distinction is actually significant. But right now, in this moment, Busta Rhymes is sitting at the top of this particular mountain. He took a public slight, he turned it into content, he reminded the world of his legendary status, he made everybody laugh, he made some sharp points that nobody could really refute, and he did it all without burning the industry down or making enemies he cannot afford to make. That is veteran behavior. That is the behavior of someone who has been navigating hip-hop politics since before the internet existed. Someone who has seen trends come and go, seen careers rise and fall, seen the industry shift in every direction imaginable, and has remained standing through all of it. And maybe that is the real story here. Not just the specifics of this VERZUZ beef, but what this whole situation reveals about the difference between someone who has truly mastered the game versus someone who is still, despite decades in the industry, occasionally letting his ego write checks that the situation cannot cash. T.I. has an incredible legacy. That is not in question. His impact on Southern hip-hop, on the mainstream crossover of trap music, on the culture of Atlanta, all of that is real and documented and nobody is taking it away from him. But this particular chapter, this VERZUZ chapter, it is not going to be remembered fondly for T.I. It is going to be remembered as the time he ran from Busta Rhymes while claiming everyone else was too far away to reach. And Busta Rhymes? He came in, said his piece, told his truth, got his laughs, made his points, and walked out looking exactly like what he claims to be. Not a king. A god. Alright y'all, and that is where we are leaving it today. But before you go anywhere, and I mean anywhere, I need you to do something for me right now. Scroll down and drop your opinion in the comments section. I want to know, are you Team Busta or are you giving T.I. the benefit of the doubt on the generational gap argument? Because this debate is real in these streets and I genuinely want to hear where you stand. And while you are down there typing your comment, hit that like button. I know you have heard it 1,000 times, but those likes genuinely tell the algorithm that this content is worth pushing to more people, and more people seeing this means more people joining the conversation. It takes literally 2 seconds and it makes a massive difference to this channel. If you are new here, first of all, welcome, you found the right place. This channel is where hip-hop drama gets the serious, detailed, no-nonsense breakdown it deserves. We do not do surface level here. We go deep. We go behind the scenes. We bring you the angles that the mainstream blogs miss. So hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications so you never miss a video. Because trust me when I tell you, this Busta and T.I. situation is not over. There are conversations happening right now that are going to produce more content, more drama, and potentially more clapbacks that none of us are ready for. And when that happens, this channel is going to be the first place breaking it down for you. The question that I want to leave you with today is this: if VERZUZ came back tomorrow and put Busta Rhymes versus T.I. on the card, would you watch? Because I think you would. I think we all would. Because somewhere underneath all this drama and all these words, there is a battle that actually could be incredible if both men showed up fully prepared and gave it everything they had. Maybe that is the real play here. Maybe all of this noise is actually just building towards something that neither of them has fully committed to yet. Maybe the beef is the marketing and the VERZUZ is still the destination. Or maybe T.I. really does think the generational gap is too wide. Maybe he really does believe Busta belongs in a different conversation. And if that is the case, then Busta's final words are going to ring in his ears for a very long time. See you a king. I'm a god. Stay locked in. We will see you in the next one. Peace.